What's up, YouTube? It's your favorite evoker, Aerith, and I'm here today to talk to you about a topic that is very, very close to my heart. I'd say one of the most common questions that I get asked on stream, or one of the most common complaints I hear, is that pugging is impossible. It's totally impossible. Climbing the ranks is ridiculous. You hit 2500 or 2600 or 2700 or whatever it is, and then you just hit a wall, and you can't get any further. All the keys break. You get into pugs. People play bad. They don't take responsibility, and the key ultimately fails. Um, I think that this is definitely the biggest challenge to keys, and also the biggest challenge to MMORPGs in as a whole. MMORPGs are, of course, very, very social games. And so there are two dynamics that we have to kind of examine. The first dynamic is actual skill in the game, prowess within the game. This is an entirely separate thing from prowess at getting good at establishing connections and progressing socially through the game. MMORPGs, I think, are very beautiful and very elegant in that your skill at the game itself does matter quite a lot. But more so than that, your ability to navigate social situations also matters. I think one of the funny things is that we're all very weird who play this game on a very, very regular basis. And so a lot of us struggle with social things. I mean, that's part of why we play World of Warcraft, right? We don't necessarily want to be out at the bar talking to strangers. That definitely makes me cringe. It probably makes you cringe as well. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're a social butterfly and you're very good at that elements of the game. But at any rate, these two things are our realities, and they are things that we have to live with. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experience, and how I went from pugging, to being one of the top rated healers in the world. Um, I did finish last season as a top 20 healer and a number 4 NA for priest. And this season I'm pretty similarly ranked, and looking to kind of coast along that same trajectory. At the start of last season, though, I did not have a team. I did not know anyone, except for I had a few connections here and there. But I did not know anyone that was necessarily chomping at the bit to get me in their group. Also, as a healer, that is a very, very competitive role. There are lots of very good healers, and there are lots of healers in general. And there's only one healer per group. So it's not the same as DPS, where you have lots and lots of opportunities. As a healer, you kind of have to find a tank, and that's a struggle. That's really, really hard. So yeah, just to give you a little bit of my background and kind of what I went through. Basically, the last season is was the first season where I went, I think, really, really deep in terms of my run. I've been definitely high rated in the past, but last season was the highest that I have ever finished a season. Um, and when that season started, as I mentioned, I did not have anyone to play with. I was completely pugging. It was a 100% only me. This is me and only me kind of mission. Um, and so I did a few things to make myself stand out. The first thing that I think that matters the most is the very, very start of a season. And I mean the very start of a season, those early weeks, you have to be on the grind. You have to be on the grind. You need to keep your points as high as you possibly can relative to the top players. This is because the top players are going to be on the grind, and the players who want to be top players and are almost top players are also going to be on the grind. And this goes like for every single rung down the ladder. Um, and so you need to be doing the same thing. You need to be on the grind. You need to get your points as high as you can early in the season from just pugging and pugging and pugging and pugging. But I'm not getting invited to groups, you might say. Very simple solution. Make your own group, invite the people you want, and go from there. Um, so that is my first tip. Definitely stay ahead of the curve. Um, my second tip, and this is the most important one, is that once you start getting into the more challenging keys and you get away from like the kind of farm stuff that it's like kind of expected, if you do mechanics, like you're just gonna win, and you start getting into the keys that are a little bit more tightly tuned, where a missed kick can mean life and death, these kinds of things, you have to take initiative. So this is, I think, the most important thing that I did last season that led me to kind of snowball and become successful. And I mean, I still feel that I'm snowballing. I think this season in particular, like, I've met so many people. I get invited to groups all the time, and I've made a lot of friends. And all of that I think I owe to the way that I played last season and the way that I approached the game last season. Um, so first things first. When you get into a group, get everybody in Discord. Get everyone in Discord. If it's your key and someone doesn't want to be in Discord, just get someone different. That person is not going to serve you. They're probably not going to pull their weights. If they do pull their weights, they're still not going to be able to communicate. So you're going to have to play around the fact that this one person is not in Discord, and that is a problem. Get rid of them. Get someone new. It is that simple. There is nothing toxic about it. You're going to say, "I'm sorry. Like I really just prefer to communicate with my teammates." The inability to communicate with you can make this a little bit harder, and I would just much more comfortable if I had someone else that would get in Discord. So that is the first thing. The second thing is to take initiative, and this is the biggest thing. I was playing on a priest last season, and priest was not the most challenging spec in the world from a rotational standpoint. I won't really get too deep into that. I do think the class was very challenging and in its own ways, and that there was a lot of nuance and interesting stuff to the class. But I did have a very high awareness of what was going on around me as I was playing the class. You can also have the same awareness playing virtually anything. And I think at this point in time, like playing, Druid, playing my Evoker, my awareness tends to be significantly higher than I would say it was before last season. And like that's something that you'll always be improving on. Um so try to improve your awareness because you're gonna need it for what I'm about to tell you. You must take initiative. If no one is calling kicks, call kicks. If there is not a plan when you get into that dungeon for calling kicks, if there's not a plan laid out, then be the one to do that. And I can help you with like kind of what that looks like. So let's say you join a pug. Well, let's say that that pug is a Ruby Life Pools. Um, at the start of the dungeon, you can, while everyone's in Discord, you can say, okay, what is our plan for the casters, for the double caster packs? How do we want to handle that? Maybe people will have ideas of their own. At the very least, you've started a conversation. If everyone is dead silent, then I would advise you to do one thing. You would ask the tank, "Hey, do you have auto markers?" If the tank has auto markers, you can ask what symbols they're going to be. You can then say, "Okay, tank, you and the demon hunter are going to be on circle. Rogue, you and the hunter are going to be on star. You are always going to be a tag team. Tank, you will always kick before the demon hunter. Demon hunter, you will always kick next. Rogue, you will always kick before the hunter. Hunter, you will always kick next." If you set things up in like these kind of easy ways that are like pretty simple to manage, it definitely makes things much easier. And having two-person tag teams who work together to lock down single mobs can be something that is very helpful. So one thing that is very important is that in order to do this, you have to have an advanced level understanding of the dungeons, and that just comes with experience. So that's the next thing is if you're playing a lot, if you're ingesting a lot of information, if you're watching a lot of the top teams, you will kind of get a feel for like what needs to be kicked. And you will kind of get a feel for how many people need to be on that. Watch people's VODs. Actually go through and see who is handling what in a group. And then that way, when you go into a pug, you can try to emulate that. In the moment, it can be very challenging, especially as a healer, to be the one who's calling kicks. But if no one is calling a strategy, if no one is calling kicks, you've got to at least try. It's going to increase the success rate of your dungeon dramatically. And what is more important, and this is the thing I'm about to that I'm kind of getting at, people will remember you. When you call kicks, people remember that. And then when you apply to another key, one of those people you played with in the past might be in that key, and you know what they might say to those people? Hey, that player is pretty good. I remember playing with them, and my experience was positive. Suddenly, you're into a key that maybe you wouldn't have gotten invited to. This is probably the most important thing that I can possibly imagine is taking initiative, being the person to call the strategy, being the person to call the kicks if you're capable of doing that, and at the very least, delegating those things, making sure that there is someone who can do that. This also goes for mechanics. There's a lot of mechanics that like I will see people dying to regularly, and so when I am pugging, if it is a mechanic that is coming up and I know people are prone to die to it, I will be the DBM. A good example of this is the Temple of the Jade Serpent. I pugged that this morning, and I was on my Rat Druid, and it was a 19, and I was very, very afraid that someone was going to get hit by one of the waves. So every time that the wave mechanic came out, when the boss did her tank buster, I would say, "Hey, find the waves, dodge the waves." And then every time I said that, people stopped what they were doing and they dodged the waves. Um, this is something that anyone can do. You can definitely be the difference maker by just being vocal. And again, if you're vocal, people will remember you. And that is the next kind of stage of what I'm getting at. Is you want to be remembered and you want to be remembered in a positive way. Everyone has bad days. There are people who will have a terrible impression of you by pure circumstance. Maybe you perform poorly in like two or three keys with a person, it just happens to line up that way. That's going to happen. Other people, if you're on your grind, if you're always doing your best, are going to have a very good impression of you. And that is ultimately what you're farming. So speaking of those people, my next thing is this. If someone else that you meet in a key seems to be doing very well, they did a lot of damage, they got a lot of stops, maybe they were a really good tank. You should add them to your B tag. I cannot say enough how important having these connections are. Um, and you will outgrow a lot of people as you climb. Was definitely my experience. I would play with some people for a while, and the keys would be good. It would be a good score for me. And then we would get to a point where I felt like I was held back a little bit, or where maybe people were dying to things a little bit too much around me. And I realized, you know what, like I'm never dying to these things, and these people are dying to these things a lot. um Maybe this group is no longer serving me, and that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with saying to someone, hey, we've had a good run, I'll see you at the top, and parting ways. You can always talk to those people, be friends with those people. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, add every single person that you meet to your B tag. This is critical. This is absolutely mission critical. You meet somebody, they're a talented player, just add them. Well, like, what are you going to lose? And then when you wake up the next day, and this is the next part, whisper them. Go through your B tag and scroll down, see what everybody's doing. Like, and if someone's in a key, like, so what? If it's a good tank, say, hey, what are you doing? Do you have a group today? The worst thing they can say is, yeah, I'm in a group. Can't play today. Okay, I'll ask again tomorrow. That is totally fine. And if you are doing this consistently, if you do this consistently, there's a good chance that eventually, you're gonna find some people that are around, and then every time you ask them to say, yeah, yeah, let's do a key, and then next thing you know, you have two or three people. A group of three people playing together is different from you being solo. Next thing you know, another person jumps on board, another person jumps on board. Suddenly, you have like what is a group of pugs that are ultimately emulating a team. Do a handful of keys together a couple days in a row, you start developing synergies. Then maybe this group serves you for like a couple of weeks, and maybe at that point you part ways. You never know. The important thing is that you are continuing to add more and more people. That you're continuing to play with lots of people, and that you're making friends with these people. And that is one of the hardest things, I think, especially as people who are, we like to stay in our little shells and like hide away. Make friends with people. They're not gonna bite you. Tell them a joke. Ask them if they knew that someone in a group with you right then is possessed by an owl. And then when they say, who? You say, do you get it? I mean, make a joke. I don't know. Try to be memorable. These things are all very, very, very important. So yeah, to get back to my story, that's basically what I was doing. I was calling kicks as a healer. I was calling out the mechanics as I saw them. And I was pugging with different people. I would meet a group of people. We would kind of come together, do a handful of keys together. Like a key ended, say, hey, you guys want to do another one? This one went really well. And if they said yes, just keep going with it. I played with a couple of different teams, like quote unquote teams. That was really just, ultimately pugs who played together for a few keys in a row, which turned into a week in a row, to 2 weeks in a row, to 3 weeks in a row. And then when those teams were no longer serving me, I might say, hey, I might go like pug today or something. I'll see you guys at the top. And that is a totally okay thing to do. Um, I actually met my current tank, Snap, who you probably see me play with a lot. He's one of my best buds. And I met that guy in a, gosh, what key was it? Iron Docks. So we're doing an Iron Docks, and I'm just pugging, and I don't know who Snap is. It turns out he's a very, very good tank. Um, but I joined this key with him. not knowing that this is a player who has like a kind of decorated history that has like a lot of experience in the game and has, competed like at a very high level for a very long time. I had no idea. That to me it was just another pug. And I joined this group with him and we're doing an iron docks and I start calling stops. I notice there's a double fling that's targeting I think our warlock, it's targeting our maybe our hunter. And I stun one of them and I say, I got this done. Like Hunter, I need you to get the next stop on this mob. I think it was like a star. I don't remember. So he did. And so that saved his life. And so then like whenever in that key there was something happening that needed someone to call it, or if I noticed something like, hey, there's a problem, it needs a solution, I was just incredibly vocal. I opened my mouth and I cued my mic. And as a result, that key went incredibly well. We timed the key. It was at the time scored for all of us. Everybody was super happy. And I think people remember those happy memories when they time keys with people because we brick so many. And when you brick a key, it feels bad. So when you time a key, like it feels great, right? Um, and so like in that moment, the tank was like, yo, that was actually really awesome. I've never heard a healer calling kicks and stops before. I was like, thanks. I've been pugging a lot, and the keys fail if nobody calls these things. So yeah, I just kind of do that. And he's like, that's really cool of you. What are you doing tonight? After raid, I'd like to do some more keys. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. This key went well. Like, why wouldn't more keys? And so yeah, from there, we just started playing together. The keys after raid went well. The next day, keys went well again, and it just kind of snowballed. That isn't to say that every single key that we did together went well. But for a few days in a row, like we were just on fire, and um, I think that was really memorable. For both of us, I think that like I definitely struck a chord in his brain because I was vocal, and I think that this is the thing that can happen to anyone. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a good player that you stumble into. It could be anybody. It could be a great player who's brand new to the game, just like maybe you are, and you could stumble into this person. You could be highly vocal, be highly assertive in the key, and they're like, "Wow, this is a player I want to play with." Like, at the very, very least, you're going to increase the success chance of the key that you're in. So even if you're not necessarily meeting someone that you're going to play with forever or for a long time, like a couple weeks, a couple months, like a year, who knows? Just because you're not necessarily meeting someone who you're going to play with for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that it was in vain because you've also increased the success chance of the key by just being vocal, by taking initiative. Um, all of these things ultimately are a very, very, very positive affirmation loop. So the next thing is just to yeah, put yourself out there. Go out there and get it. There's absolutely nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing to fear. When you wake up or when you get off work or whatever your case may be, whenever you're logging onto World of Warcraft, get in the LFG, search those keys, find one that's in your range, and apply for it. And yeah, I don't know. That's a long rant. But I basically wanted to talk about this to try to get some advice. Because I think that, it's tough out there. I remember I was there just like you. And now I'm on my way to success. I think. Maybe. Who knows? Possible or not. I could freaking fail. Still. But I'm gonna try not to do that. I don't know. Okay, that's all I got for you. I just wanted to go off the cuff and just kind of talk for a little bit about how I managed to do what I've done and where I plan on going in the future. But yeah, I love you guys. Good luck out there.